let me warm up. Get out of my way. I'm the governor.
The governor of New York, some people think, is warming up for a much bigger job someday.
The country seems to have put what happened at Beirut out of sight and out of mind. But no Marine who was there that morning will ever forget.
I wish I could put it on a picture screen so the world could see exactly how it happened.
He was a real live nephew of his Uncle Sam, born on the 4th of July.
I was rebellious when I was 4 years old, I think, and a nuisance, too.
Her politics were controversial, but her talent was indisputable.
Good evening. Welcome to Crossroads for the 4th of July. This is the day that gave us a free country. But what good would that have been, Bill, without a lot of free spirits to live in it and make it work? I'll have a tribute to some Yankee Doodle dandies a little later on tonight.
And on this day, Charles, when our thoughts do run to patriotic sentiments, there's a reminder of what patriotism costs when it's more than sentiment. I have a report on what the Marines really think happened in Beirut.
Our first story, however, is about a new name in American politics. The country's attention is fixed on Reagan, Mondale, Hart, Jackson right now. But out there on the horizon, a lot of political analysts think they see a rising star. Mario Cuomo, the governor of New York.
We'll all have a chance to see that star shine as the Democrats' keynote speaker in San Francisco a week from Monday night. Of course, he has a lot at stake. Not one Democratic keynoter in my lifetime has gone on to be president. And a lot of people think that John Glenn blew his opportunity to be Jimmy Carter's running mate in 1976 because he made a poor showing as the keynote speaker.
True, but of course they chose John Glenn in the first place because he was a national hero. They chose Cuomo for a different reason, because he has the ability to communicate. And they think what he communicates has a broad appeal, a belief in the old virtues, family, hard work, obedience to law, combined with a social conscience. And, of course, they chose him for another reason, too. He's a fresh face.
Jamie Burns. You know, there was a great poet by the name of Burns. Did you ever hear of Bobby Burns?
Watching him in a crowd, quoting Robert Burns to a little girl.
Frazzita. Siciliano, they don't, Messinese.
Speaking Italian to a constituent who's Italian. Greeting a seminarian in Latin, you realize that this politician with the big nose and the sad eyes and the foreign-sounding name possesses considerable learning as well as inborn political instinct.
Let me just tell you in a nutshell. If we do nothing, you're going to get wiped out. If we don't pass some kind
Political predictions are chancy, but here's one that is being very widely heard. Someday, you're going to have a chance to vote for this man for president.
I do solemnly swear.
To support the Constitution of the United States.
His springboard is the same one Franklin D. Roosevelt had, governor of New York. In political credo, he's like Roosevelt, but not in upbringing. Mario Cuomo rose to the governorship from the tenements of New York, an immigrant grocer's son. He didn't speak English until he was 8 years old.
My parents came some 60 years ago from another part of this world, driven by deprivation, without funds, without education, without skills. Like millions of others, my mother and father came here with very little more than a willingness to spend all their effort in honest toil, but that they were able to build a family and live in dignity and see one of their children go from behind their little grocery store in South Jamaica, where he was born, to the highest seat in the greatest state, in the greatest nation.
If you're wondering why they chose him to be keynote speaker, this is why. Because he has the ability, almost alone among politicians today, to move an audience deeply. It wasn't only his wife, Matilda, who was moved by this speech. Nearly everyone else who heard it thought Mario Cuomo's inaugural address a year and a half ago to be one of the best political speeches of recent years. In a time when most of the Democratic Party, accommodating to Ronald Reagan's success, is turning its back on old-fashioned Roosevelt liberalism, Mario Cuomo is, though he resists the label, precisely an old-fashioned Roosevelt liberal.
But I believe that government also has an obligation to assist those who, for whatever inscrutable reason, have been left out by fate. The homeless, the infirm, the destitute, to help provide those necessary things which, through no fault of their own, they cannot provide for themselves.
Jefferson thought big government was an enemy. Ronald Reagan thinks pretty much the same thing. What do you think?
Those people who say big government is bad are being simplistic. And those people who say big government is the answer are being simplistic. The truth is you need both. Now look at the reality of the present situation. President Reagan, true, false, in a high school exam. President Reagan is against big government, true. 98% of the students. Well, then how come we have the largest budget in history? How come we have the largest army in history? How come we have the largest deficit in history? How come he wants government to tell you whether or not you should have an abortion, whether or not you should read a book, whether or not you should pray? Is that less government? True or false? Oh, can't answer that one, true or false. That one has to be essay.
Mario Cuomo doesn't see many things as true or false, black or white. He is blessed or cursed with an inability to overlook shades of gray, subtleties, and nuances. He is dismayed by the politics of slogans, bumper stickers, and 28-second statements on television. He thinks politicians ought to do more explaining.
Let me give you a specific illustration. You hear this raging debate over our economic policy. And what do we do about the old industries, the steel-bending industries? Lackawanna in our state is down because Bethlehem is out. A whole generation of steel workers out of work. What do they do with their hands? They're 50 years old. They're 45 years old. They never worked with anything but steel. Well, there's one body of thought, elite, avant-garde, usually with hairspray hairdos that say, well, we have to move into a whole new world. Services, export, high technology, leave steel bending behind. That's absurd. Are you telling me that you're going to have $1.65 trillion more for defense? That we all agree we need more defense, but we're not going to be able to bend steel? Who's going to make the tanks? The Germans? The Russians? The Swedes? Of course, if you're going to commit that much money to defense, wouldn't you have to do some steel bending? And the answer is, yes, you would. Gee willikers, people say, I didn't think of that. Of course you didn't think of that. They didn't tell you that because they talk in terms of slogans. No, I think there is a reasonableness between all these abstract words, which if you could reach it and explain it, would win you a consensus that we don't now have in this country.
We just have to instruct them.
Consensus building, finding the middle ground where opponents can come together, is Cuomo's specialty as a politician.
The second thing we have to do
This is the third thing, Jim.
All right.
In community forums like this one in upstate Republican Watertown, which voted against him, he does more listening than most politicians do. When he's with people, he moves like an old athlete, which he is. He was a minor league outfielder in the Pittsburgh Pirates organization until he got beamed by a fastball and decided on law school instead of baseball. He was good at law and mediation. In politics, he looked like a failure. He ran 10 years ago for lieutenant governor and lost. He ran later for mayor of New York and lost. When he ran for governor, his Republican opponent outspent him 3-1, and it looked as if he were going to lose again. He was advised to soft pedal some of his principles and stop explaining so much. He shook his head, stuck to his principles, kept explaining, and won. He didn't do it by telling voters what they wanted to hear. For example, voters in New York are strongly in favor of the death penalty. They elected a man who kept telling them he was strongly against it.
It doesn't work. It's never worked. It's wrong. It's used to eclipse other issues. It is a perfect con, if you will, for the politicians. Here's a society that doesn't understand discipline anymore, that doesn't understand the bestiality and the brutality. Politicians confused about what to do about it. They know you need more police, but that's expensive. They know the law has to be changed, but that's too difficult. They know they need prisons, but that's too expensive. So they need to think something up that costs them no money at all and makes them popular with you who are concerned about his daughter being raped. And so they give you the death penalty. And they wave it like a flag, and they mesmerize you. Because if you're watching that electric chair in their hand, you're not noticing that they didn't give you more police, they didn't give you better laws, they didn't give you more prisons, they didn't give you jobs that you need so desperately to avoid the social disorientation that produces crime. So instead of doing it in the complicated, difficult way, I'll con you with an electric chair. Just watch the electric chair and your problems will go away. It's a phony.
The legislature has twice passed a death penalty bill. Governor Cuomo has twice vetoed it.
What is this? What is this, a canapé? Gee. I have to bring my mother up.
There's a streak of philosopher in him, and a streak of Catholic theologian, and more introspection than we are used to in our politicians. He keeps diaries and has even published a couple of them. His critics say he is too much of a loner as governor, too reluctant to delegate authority. They say he's trying to run the state the way his father ran that grocery store. It's true that Mario Cuomo is devoted to putting in long hours and doing things himself. 25 years ago, his father built a two-story house in a middle-class neighborhood of Queens for his son Mario's family. The governor still lives in it when he's in New York City. In the capital, Albany, his house is a little bigger. The governor's mansion took a little getting used to.
Okay, Matilda, get you ready.
I'm going to give you a little kisserini-roo, your favorite veal spadini. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Too salty.
Yeah, really?
The word Mario Cuomo uses most is family. The family of New York. The family of America. Sundays, he tries to reserve for his own family. His wife of 30 years, Matilda, and as many of their 5 children as happen to be home. Dinner at home, a game of half-court, one-on-one with his son, Chris.
Well, let me warm up. Get out of my way. I'm the governor.
He's the governor. 12 days from now, he's the keynote speaker. Expect him to speak of family, of the country as a family, which must share benefits and burdens. A lot of political analysts think this 52-year-old man in a warm-up suit is just warming up. The Los Angeles Times calls him the Democrats' Prince Charming. The Wall Street Journal calls him a star rising in the East. Conservative columnist George Will wrote the other day that Mario Cuomo is the presidential asset of the Democratic Party, the Democrat most capable of marshaling his party's strength.
Notice how the dog comes to the victor.
That's a good point. Come here, Jen.
We watched him trying to coax the family dog away from his son in a gentle contest of wills. Mario Cuomo is very persuasive. 2 weeks from tonight, Governor Cuomo will stand up on the floor of the Democratic Convention and vote with the bulk of his delegation for Walter Mondale. The two men are very close, and it is still not out of the question that Mondale will turn to Cuomo to be his vice presidential running mate, a role that Cuomo has said repeatedly he does not want and will not accept. But he can give Mondale advice, can't he? I asked him what it would be. He said Mondale doesn't need his advice. And then he offered some.
What I'm going to say to Walter Mondale is simply talk basics. Talk common sense. Forget the slogans. Forget the shibboleths. Talk about things like confidence. Remind people that for 50 years, we applied basically traditional democratic principles, that we proved for 50 years that we're strong enough to have a good defense, take care of the homeless, and not tax you to death all at the same time. We don't have to prove it for the first time. We proved it for 50 years. And then say to them, those of you who think that the social programs ruined us and failed, call yourselves, a lot of you, hypocrites, because you made it thanks to many of those social programs. Many of you were educated because of them. Many of you were able to buy a house because of them. Many of you were secure in your old age because of those same social programs. And just as they worked for you, they should work for the next generation. That's what I would tell them.
Most Democrats have edged away from that kind of talk. A week from Monday, Mario Cuomo is likely to give them a good, strong dose of it from the podium in San Francisco. To those who think the New Deal social agenda is dead, he likes to tell the story of the blue spruce, a parable of resurrection.
We lived in South Jamaica in Queens, which was all tenements, and we were behind the grocery store and then above the grocery store. And when Papa really felt that he had made it, he bought a house in Hollis Wood. Now, that meant a house with a backyard separate from other houses, not attached by brick. A real house with a real yard and even a big tree, a blue spruce. At that time, the blue spruce was about 45 feet tall and stood up right at the corner of the property, which was elevated, and it was Papa's dream. Now, we knew nothing about trees and grass and yards, my brother and I. We knew all about fences and sneakers and fire escapes and tennis balls, Spaldings, we call them. And here in the first week that we were in the property, there's a terrible rainstorm, and the blue spruce collapses, comes up out of the ground. Its nose falls into the asphalt of the street below, and my brother and I despaired. The spruce is dead. My father, little pipsqueak of a guy, weighed nothing, bad hip, wore glasses, could hardly see, took one look at that blue spruce in the rain and said to Frankie and me, we're going to push him up, but he's going to grow again. We said, Pa, the tree is gone, the roots are... He says, shut up. We're going to push him up, he's going to grow again. We got ropes, Papa and I up, Frankie on the bottom, pushing the tree, us pulling all through the rain for 2 hours. We got it to stand up. We had it kind of sink back into the ground where it came from. We shoveled mud on it. We put boulders on it. And Papa looked up at that blue spruce and says, don't worry, she's going to grow again. Now, if you go back to Hollis Wood, that blue spruce is there now, 65 or so feet tall, its nose pointing right up to the heavens, pretending it never had its cheek on the canvas.
Mario Cuomo, who started out in a tenement behind the grocery store, values that story of faith and hard work and reward. The country doesn't know him yet, but will. He's about to step out of his relatively quiet office into a national spotlight.
Hi, Doug. Hi, Larry. How are you? Hi, Tom.
Thank you very much.
How are you?
When we come back, we're going to turn our spotlight in a different direction, to that awful Sunday morning last October when 220 American Marines died in Lebanon. We have found out a little more about how that happened.
AT&T is in cereal. How? Captain Crunch put a treasure map in their cereal boxes and added something else that turned out to be a real treasure. What was it? An AT&T 800 service number. 24 million kids called to find out where the treasure was. And 18 million boxes of cereal sold in 6 weeks. The people of AT&T Communications. We're thinking about your business in ways you never thought of.
Kid, 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 it's a good time for being a kid. Pass around a smile or two. A good time for tasting the fun side of life, like only you and Ronald can do. Bye-bye. Just the way you do the little things that you do. You bring out the kid in the rest of us do. Here's looking at you, kids. Sunday smiles on happy faces, wide eyes for pride. You bring fun times with the sunshine shining from your eyes. Hey, little lady, hey, little man, try to stay a kid just as long as you can. When dreams are brand new, they still can come true. It's a good time, all the great taste at McDonald's.
The bicentennial. 200 years before, John Adams had said this day should be celebrated with pomp and parade, with shows, guns, bells, bonfires, and illumination from one end of this continent to the other. On our 200th birthday, I think we did him proud.
Sunday, join the stars for the biggest block party of the year. Salute to Lady Liberty, a star-spangled, all-singing, all-dancing celebration that's full of surprises.
Memorial Day came and went in May with barely a mention of the Marines who were killed in Beirut last October. So we determined that on the 4th of July we would remember their sacrifice. It was soon apparent as we began reporting that a simple remembrance would not be enough. Talking to survivors of the massacre and to others, we learned that many Marines don't believe the public understands fully what happened there. When President Reagan took responsibility for the commanders on the ground, the national debate for all practical purposes was over. The impression left with most Americans is that the Marines were simply caught with their guard down when the sneak attack occurred. They were, but that's not the whole story. They were also caught in a crossfire of conflicting policy and decisions made often in haste by civilian officials, frequently at odds with each other. Our report looks at the confusion that surrounded the Marines' role in Lebanon and how this increased their peril. The country may have put what happened at Beirut out of sight and out of mind, but no Marine who was there that morning will ever forget.
It still hurts to go there. I found myself weeks after the attack avoiding the place. And a colleague of mine came and said, "Do many men go there?" And I said, "No." And he said, "Well, I want to walk down. I want to try to get a feeling of what went on there." And I said, "You know, why?" I was reluctant to take him, and then finally I took him. And as I walked down there, and I could still smell death, and I could see the remnants of running shorts and broken radios and novels and men's magazines and all of these things that represented a very vital part of the cream of our youth destroyed. The pain came back. And I think that pain will always be there.
220 Marines lost their lives that morning. Good Marines on active duty don't talk much about what went wrong in Beirut. Major Robert Jordan retired so he could.
And at this point in my career, I felt that the story of what happened in Beirut had to be told without any colorization of what the administration wanted or what Marine Corps policy was. It had to be told in human terms so my fellow Americans would understand it. And I couldn't do that in uniform. And so I felt it was time that I take the uniform off and exercise the full range of my citizenship and perform the responsibility of telling my fellow Americans what actually happened there as I saw it.
As Jordan saw it, this man, his commanding officer, Colonel Timothy Garrity, had to carry out decisions over which he had little control.
He was kind of in a situation where he had the responsibility without a whole lot of authority, while others had a lot of authority without much responsibility. But he's the fellow that ended up taking the dime.
The problem for the Marines began with the political objectives of the mission. They came as part of a peacekeeping force from 4 nations to serve as moral support for the Lebanese government. The U.S. agreement with Lebanon expressly ruled out a combat role, so Marines, trained to fight, were told to sit where the warring factions could see them. To be a symbol, show the flag, and above all, remain neutral in the fighting. This they did, even when snipers fired upon them. But by early September, the Marines were finding it hard to maintain their neutrality and safety. Their mission had not changed, but the danger had. Over American objections, Israeli troops withdrew from the Shuf Mountains just east of Beirut. The Lebanese army moved to fill the vacuum. When fierce fighting with the Syrian-backed forces in the mountains went badly for the government, Lebanese officials asked the Americans for the support of naval gunfire from offshore. Richard Fairbanks was at the embassy as one of 2 special envoys President Reagan had sent to Lebanon.
Our analysis was that the Lebanese army had a very thin line stretched across Souq al-Gharb, and if you broke that thin line, it was 3 miles downhill to the presidential palace and to our embassy. And we have had experience with people coming in and taking hostages at embassies, and we had a situation where many of these people who had been involved in the fighting were the ones who had been involved in terrorist attacks against American interests in that region. And those were not the kind of people that we wanted to be taking over our diplomatic personnel.
The diplomats and military men on the scene debated a critical decision. Should the U.S. fire from its ships and planes if it appeared the Lebanese army was about to collapse? Under the law, the ships could be authorized to fire only in self-defense of American forces and without changing U.S. neutrality. The President's special envoy, Robert McFarland, who declined an invitation to appear on this broadcast, was making the case for self-defense directly to the White House. So was his deputy, Richard Fairbanks.
What then was your recommendation and Ambassador McFarland's to the President about the shelling?
Well, we certainly believed that, and I continue to believe that it was a correct decision, that we had our people there at risk. We couldn't allow them simply to be sitting ducks, and if people were going to fire at us, they had to know that we were going to fire back. Now, that was not an attempt to interject us into the fighting. It was an attempt to say we are there as neutral, peacekeeping forces, as diplomatic personnel attempting to bring an end to the fighting, and if you are going to take us on militarily, you are going to feel a military response from us.
Was this a change in your judgment in the mission of the military forces there?
No. As I say, we had had a situation before this battle in which there had been incoming artillery rounds, and we had taken casualties, and we'd had deaths of the Marines in the airport.
But the commander of those Marines at the airport had another opinion. Colonel Timothy Garrity was the only one who could call in the naval gunfire, and he resisted. He believed that if the U.S. fired from the ships, even in self-defense, the Americans would no longer be seen as neutral. Colonel Garrity would not be interviewed for this broadcast, but Major Robert Jordan was in the room when Colonel Garrity got a phone call. It came from the general serving on the diplomatic team from Washington. The message was that the ships should fire.
His words were something to the effect, General, do you realize how vulnerable that would make us down here? And he challenged that, as he had done a number of requests. In fact, had denied some requests from time to time that he felt were inappropriate.
At one point, Colonel Garrity reportedly shouted, quote, "We'll pay the price, we'll get slaughtered down here." Did you hear him say that?
I think that's an accurate paraphrase. I couldn't say those are the exact same words.
But you did hear him say...
Something similar to that.
Did you at any time in these days that are under consideration hear directly from Colonel Garrity that he didn't want to call in the Navy firepower?
I did not.
You did not. Did he make the case to any others that came to you by second hand that the use of naval gunfire would destroy Marine neutrality?
I can't recall. I don't recall hearing it, but that doesn't mean in all the hundreds of conversations we had, someone might not have mentioned it at one time. We talked to him a lot. We also had our own military people, an Army general who was stationed with us as part of our mission, and he was in touch both with the Lebanese Army and with our military personnel. And we were
But it was the military advising the diplomats who carried the day, because it was the diplomats who had direct access to the President and the National Security Council.
With two sets of military advisors on the scene, wasn't in fact Colonel Garrity neutralized?
Well, let's put it in the perspective of a combat situation where a company commander puts a PFC in a listening post. He puts him out there full well knowing that he's vulnerable. And PFC reports in and says, CO, the enemy's approaching. They're going to be in my position in about 5 minutes, and it looks like I'm probably going to be overrun. And he has permission to bug out. Company commander analyzes the situation, and he realizes that the PFC's analysis is probably right. But for the good of the whole of the unit, he has to keep him there to the last possible minute, in effect sacrificing him. That doesn't give the PFC any right to overrule the decision of the commander. And in effect, he stays at his post until he's killed. And so the larger need is served. And in this instance, Colonel Garrity is the PFC. He does what he's told.
But in this case, the higher need was being determined by officials from Washington who had come out to the embassy in Beirut and were not where Colonel Garrity was, down with those Marines at the airbase.
That's correct.
On September 19th, Colonel Garrity finally ordered the ships to fire. A week later, there was yet another ceasefire among the warring factions. The president's special envoys hoped they had bought a little time in which to negotiate a more permanent peace.
The president has directed that we turn our efforts back to the larger issue of getting the withdrawal of foreign forces.
But to anti-government factions, the Americans had become combatants, and the naval gunfire gave extremists like those who had already blown up the American embassy yet another focus for their anger over American involvement.
But to tell you the truth, everybody is ready for another Vietnam in the Middle East. If America wants it, we're ready for it.
Do you think the Americans are going to have to fight their way out of Beirut?
They better leave right now, before it's too late.
At the time of the ceasefire, a delegation from the House Armed Services Committee had just completed a trip to Beirut. Heading the delegation was Representative Samuel Stratton. A month after their return to Washington, and with the Marines still under fire from snipers, 4 members of the delegation warned the Secretary of Defense, Caspar Weinberger, that the Marines were at serious risk.
And we said, Mr. Secretary, these guys are in a very dangerous position, and can't you really explain this to the president, that they ought to be pulled out because they're a military force, but they're just sitting ducks? And the secretary sort of put his hands over his brow and said, yeah, I know it, but I've got to follow orders, something like that. And I made the point, I said, you know, they're trying to pick them off now one by one, but if we leave them in there too long, there could be some kind of a massacre. And 3 days later, the place blew up.
Did you conclude from what the Secretary of Defense said to you that he had been making a case to the president that the Marines were in danger and something should be done?
Well, I think from what we had heard earlier, that the Secretary never really approved it. But he's a good soldier, and he goes along with the president.
The rescue operations, as some of you have seen, are continuing. It's a long and tedious operation that is going on and will continue until we are certain that we've accounted for every sailor and Marine.
Colonel Garrity and the entire military chain of command would soon find themselves as the focus of 2 major investigations. A Pentagon commission concluded that the Marine commanders on the scene and their military supervisors shared responsibility for poor security. But the report also pointed to the policy itself and the civilians responsible for it.
Mr. Ambassador, what do you make of the Long Commission's conclusion that in addition to the faulty security requirements, quote, there was a series of circumstances beyond the control of these commanders that influenced their judgment and actions? Do you think that refers to the President and his NSC advisors?
I don't know what it refers to.
What do you think the House Armed Services Committee was talking about when it said it called into account higher policy-making authority that adopted and continued a policy that placed military units in a deployment where protection was inevitably inadequate?
Well, I would say that the vast majority, obviously, of the Marine casualties that we took came as a result of the one terrorist attack. But I think that that is an overgeneralization which doesn't bear close attention.
Congressman, there is a line in the report of your committee which says, quote, the civilian leadership appears to have paid insufficient attention to the difficulties of the mission it assigned. What in particular does that mean?
I think it meant that the civilians were going ahead with keeping the Marines in there without any real appreciation of the military dangers that they faced. And apparently the military felt that they couldn't interfere or intervene when the president had directed that they be placed there. And so you had people who were not really trained as military individuals who were nevertheless putting and keeping this force in a very dangerous military situation.
So it would be fair to conclude that this policy was being made and directed from the White House?
No question about it, and I think the president realized it. And we also had intimations that the military themselves, and I even got the feeling that the Marine headquarters was not too happy about the job that had been assigned to them. And increasingly, my feeling has been that the thing was actually being run by the political types. The President, the National Security Council, Mr. McFarlane, and Ambassador Fairbanks, and the military were simply sitting by and not doing a heck of a lot to change the picture.
Isn't it a dangerous situation when unaccountable civilians are making military policy that military officers have to carry out and take responsibility for?
I think that is certainly the major lesson that we should have learned and should be learning from Lebanon, absolutely.
One of our goals was the removal of all foreign troops from Lebanon. That hasn't happened. Another goal was to establish a stable central government in Lebanon. That hasn't happened. Another goal was security for Israel's northern border. That hasn't happened. We accomplished none of our goals in Lebanon. What do you say to the families of those men who died there? For what did they die?
Well, I would say, first of all, that the final chapter in Lebanon has not been written. We continue to have exactly those policy goals, and those policy goals are crucially important to the United States. We are the ones who can help bring peace to the region. If we don't bring peace to the region, ourselves, our children, our grandchildren are going to have a tremendously dangerous, volatile situation to face forever.
What would you say to policymakers?
Well, I would ask them to be very careful in the future before they ever commit the military, recognizing the heavy price that might have to be paid, and that before they commit the military, be sure that they're willing to go as far as they have to go in order to win militarily if that commitment becomes hostile. I think anything less is going to send young men in harm's way with very severe restrictions.
But it's one thing, isn't it, to commit the military, and another to leave them exposed, to leave those young boys, men, exposed out there by that airport, knowing that somebody wanted to grab them by the buckle.
Well, I'm not sure that those who had the power to change things perceived that.
Colonel Garrity did.
I believe so.
You did. And those in power didn't listen to you.
I think maybe now I know, or I think I know why. If someone asked me, why did they die, I'd say, representing America, I guess. Just representing what America is why they died. Somebody took a cheap shot at us, that's all.
We all represented your freedoms. You know, what you're doing right now is freedom of your speech, you know, freedom of the press. That's what we represented. We were trying to show them, no matter how many different people live together, you don't need the hostilities that they had. You could live together.
We had to go back. If they said Colonel Garrity is going to be in charge of the mountain, he's going to go back to Beirut, would you want to go? I say, damn right I would.
On a runway in Frankfurt last Monday evening, I watched as 142 caskets were offloaded from an aircraft. And as I wept inside, I asked, Lord, where do we get such men?
3 weeks ago, we wrote the Secretary of Defense asking for comments on Congressman Stratton's recollection of their meeting. No answer had come by Monday, so we called the Secretary's office. An aide told us Mr. Weinberger would be writing next week to deny that such an exchange had occurred.
You know, I lease old Reliable here from AT&T. It's gone through the Griffith Family School of Hard Knocks and come through with flying colors. Of course, if I ever did have a problem, I'd just call AT&T toll-free or take it to one of their phone centers for exchange. Leasing's smart for me. It's smart because no matter what happens, I can always relax.
AT&T Consumer Sales and Service.
Nothing good comes easy, nothing easy shows how good you are. That's why our athletes are out there training hard. And I bought Olympic coins, gold and silver Olympic coins, to help them up from their reaching for that star.
Now you can give the joy and excitement of Olympic gold and silver coins. Today's 10-year-olds could be tomorrow's gold medal winners. To support future training programs and the Summer Games, these beautiful commemorative coins are being offered by the U.S. Treasury. They've never been issued before and will never be available again. Support the home team. Buy an Olympic coin, and someday it may turn into an Olympic medal.
So join the team today, be part of the dream today. Support the home team all the way home.
At many banks, coin dealers, fine stores, savings and loans, and post offices.
Coming up on Crossroads, a salute to George M. Cohan and other Americans born on the 4th of July. Next, celebrate our greatest athletes and their incredible stories. Witness rare historic films as Olympic heroes return to the sites of their triumphs. From the controversies to the glory of sport, they represented America at the Olympics. An all-new special to celebrate the 4th, next.
This is CBS.
Hey, I'm only human. I didn't know Alpo cost the same as other dry dog foods. Now I know.
Alpo beef flavored dinner. Real meat protein, really good price.
John F. Lawhon's 4th of July sale. We made a special purchase on this Lane contemporary bedroom and are passing the savings on to you. Suggested list price, $1,499. You can have this bedroom suit for only $697, save $802. Price includes headboard, triple dresser, frame mirror, and nightstand. The matching chest also on sale for only $299. Budget terms available. The 4th of July sale now at John F. Lawhon Furniture.
The Sun King is a Channel 4 documentary filmed in France on the life and times of Louis XIV. He built prodigiously, yet for almost half his 72-year reign, he was at war with most of the nations of Europe. One of the great ladies' men of history. See The Sun King, 7 p.m. Saturday on Channel 4, brought to you by the Shell Oil Company.
4th of July fireworks tonight at 10. On Saturday. I never met her, Bill. I know you did. She certainly seemed to be a feisty figure, always in a public fight over something or another.
You're absolutely right. For most of her 79 years, she was a very public figure. The author of such acclaimed dramas as The Little Foxes, The Children's Hour, and Watch on the Rhine also appeared, playing herself, in real-life dramas, political causes on the left, the fight against fascism, the ego wars of Hollywood, the confrontation with Joseph McCarthy. She'll be remembered for all that. But I think I'll remember her for something else, for a story she told me in an interview 10 years ago.
Tell me about the fig tree.
Well, I think you mean the fig tree I wrote about in Unfinished Woman, where I spent a great deal of my New Orleans childhood when the weather would allow it. It was my aunt had a boarding house, and the boarding house had a fair amount of grounds. And there was a quite large, exceptionally large fig tree. And I rigged up, it was sufficiently removed from the house and heavy in limb and leaf that you couldn't be seen. So I rigged up a seat for myself and baskets that I used to put on pulleys and books that I kept up there and food that I took up there. And I lived many a day and sometimes part of a night in that fig tree. I would skip school. Since I partly went to school in New York and partly went to school in New Orleans, I was behind my class in New York and way ahead of my class in New Orleans. So in New Orleans, they really didn't care whether I showed up or not. Nobody minded. If I showed up 2 or 3 times a week, nobody said anything. So I would frequently take all my school books and go around the block and get on the streetcar and get off, come right back to Fig Tree.
Well, I'll show you what I mean when I say I make perhaps too much of something, but This is the way you describe the fig tree in an unfinished woman. The fig tree was heavy, solid, comfortable. And I had, through time, convinced myself that it wanted me, missed me when I was absent, and approved all the rigging I had done for the happy days I spent in its arms. And the question becomes, has Lillian Hellman spent the rest of her life looking for another fig tree?
Yes, of course. All of us. Whatever that fig tree has been in everybody's life. I'm not sure one finds it after childhood, and one is very lucky to find it in childhood, isn't one? Most children don't find it. I was at one with that tree.
For someone at the center of so many storms, wrestling with pen and in person with ideas, events, and adversaries, Lillian Hellman was a shy woman. She was even nervous coming on stage with Elizabeth Taylor when Little Foxes was revived on Broadway. I think she would rather have been a little girl again, sheltered from the world in the branches of a fig tree. We all should have such a place, she told me once. She said, I hope you found your tree.
I'll have a reading from the American Almanac for the 4th of July when we come back, and tell you what Louis Armstrong, Dear Abby, and Calvin Coolidge have in common.
Want to build a super day? Then start with the one great taste that makes a super bowl of cereal. Kellogg's Corn Flakes.
Just think of crispy golden flakes.
Delicious, crunchy flakes of corn.
So pure and simple, just can't wait.
Low in sugar, loaded with vitamins and iron.
So good for you, don't hesitate.
For a super bowl of our most nutritious corn flakes ever.
What a super bowl. Have yourself a super bowl. Kellogg's Corn Flakes. Super taste, super good. Kellogg's Corn Flakes.
Get ready for
Real going in.
real tomatoes.
Great taste coming out.
Mild green chilies.
Real going in. Great taste coming out.
New Kraft taco dressing. There's nothing like it. With real vegetables, spices, fresh sour cream. Kraft puts real ingredients in, so you get real taste out.
Tomatoes, chilies, Olay.
New Kraft taco dressings.
Real going in. Great taste coming out. Kraft.
Tonight is unmistakably.
I really hate to leave.
Tonight is unmistakably.
You know what tonight is?
No.
Tonight is unmistakably.
Tonight's the night we have dinner at my place.
Tonight is unmistakably. Tonight is
Here's to a wonderful day.
Tonight is unmistakably. Steak and ale.
Here's to our place.
Nathaniel Hawthorne, who wrote The Scarlet Letter, was born on the 4th of July. So was Rube Goldberg, who used to dream up those contraptions for doing things the hard way. So was Abigail Van Buren, Dear Abby. The 4th of July is the birthday not only of our country, but also of some of our illustrious countrymen. We thought a good way to celebrate the day would be to celebrate some of them, the real live nephews of their Uncle Sam. Listen. Who could that be? Who else? Louis Daniel Armstrong was born on the 4th of July, 1900, born to play that lyrical horn and to show us what joy is. If there were no other reason for celebrating the 4th of July, the fact that it's Louis Armstrong's birthday would be reason enough. This is the birthday of George M. Cohan, too. At least he always said it was. Before George M. Cohan came along, there were European operettas. After him, there was an American musical theater. There's a statue of him in Times Square giving his regards to Broadway, as Broadway will forever give its regards to him. Way down upon the Swanee River in White Springs, Florida, Beverly Davis plays a song that lies as securely in the American memory as any other. On the 4th of July, 1826, 50th anniversary of the Declaration of Independence, the same day Thomas Jefferson and John Adams died, Stephen Foster was born. The Howard Chandler Christie mural at the Foster Memorial tries to picture beautiful dreamer, oh Susanna, Jeannie with the light brown hair, and my old Kentucky home. You can't really get Stephen Foster on canvas, but we'll never get his melodies out of our minds. But of all the famous Americans born on the 4th of July, the real Yankee doodle dandy was Calvin Coolidge. He was vacationing at his birthplace, Plymouth, Vermont, when the word came that President Harding had died. Cal Coolidge's father, a justice of the peace, came down to the parlor and swore him in as president by the light of a kerosene lamp. Do you remember those pictures of President Reagan chopping wood at his ranch? Well, Calvin Coolidge was the first president to be afflicted by the newsreel camera. The cameramen asked him to do all sorts of silly, homely things, and President Coolidge must have thought it was his duty to do them. If only he had said no, all future presidents might have felt free to say no, and the photo opportunity, as it is called in Washington today, would still be waiting to be invented. Those early cameramen posed Cal Coolidge with a hobby horse one day.
Mr. President, would you mind getting on the horse?
I don't think he did get on that horse, but he did most anything to oblige the cameramen. And as president, he did very little else. H.L. Mencken wrote, "The itch to run things did not afflict him. He was content to let them run themselves." Well, the truth is, things ran themselves pretty well while Calvin Coolidge was president. No scandals, no panics, no wars. In Plymouth, Vermont, they think of the 4th of July not only as Independence Day, but also as the birthday of their former neighbor, Mr. Coolidge. This afternoon, President Coolidge's son, John, and his wife, and other members of the family, led a quiet walk to the president's grave. No bands, no crowds. You would not call it a 4th of July parade. That would be out of character for Plymouth, Vermont, and for Calvin Coolidge. There was a prayer, and the laying of a wreath, and the playing of taps. To honor the birthday of a decent and ordinary man, and of the country he sprang from. So, happy birthday to Mr. Coolidge, and to Louis Armstrong and George M. Cohan and Stephen Foster. And come to think of it, happy birthday to all the rest of us. I'm Charles Kuralt.
And I'm Bill Moyers. Good night, Charles, and good night to you.
This is the definitive book on champagne. While writing it, noted author William Kaufman evaluated the finest champagnes in the world.
Here's an extraordinary find. A California champagne that is both truly dry and delightfully drinkable. New Andre Brut. No other American champagne can compare.
New Andre Brut. No other American champagne can compare.
Burger King presents A Star.
Now that I'm a star, I can't always go to Burger King. So I spend a lot of time thinking about that juicy flame-boiled Whopper.
Tender beef coming through the fire.
Thinking about it.
Sizzling Whopper broiling just for you.
And thinking about it.
Aren't you hungry? Your Whopper, Mr. Lewis.
Of course, being a star does have its advantages.
For Burger King now.
If you put off buying that new refrigerator till Sears National Home Appliance Sale, you should know it's here. Come and save $50 on this Kenmore frostless refrigerator. Save $100 on this microwave oven with AccuWave, which cooks foods from all sides. And save $70 on this full-size Kenmore dishwasher. If you want great deals on appliances, don't put it off.
There's more for your life at Sears.
Thursday, a holiday vacation alone leaves Magnum stranded in a sea of terror. And...
What?
Simon and Simon take a painful shot at trying to save an innocent man framed for murder. Then on Knots Landing,
My files are my business.
Abby finds Wolfbridge too hot to handle.
Our business.
Thursday,
Saturday. They're gonna save the world with Granny's secret formula.
Oh, no! No, not that.
It's the return of the Beverly Hillbillies.
Now stay tuned as 10 Olympic winners take a look at the past and recall their moments of glory on America at the Olympics next following.
84 gorgeous women from around the globe. Which one will be crowned the most beautiful in the world? Live from Miami, Florida, an evening of entertainment and suspense. It's the 33rd annual Miss Universe pageant with hosts Bob Barker and Joan Van Ark and special guest star Tom Jones. The Miss Universe pageant, Monday.
Good evening from CBS News. This is Newsbreak. More than 500,000 people gathered at the Washington Monument for the largest of the day's 4th of July celebrations. The big draw, the Beach Boys rock group and other popular music stars. The Beach Boys missed the show last year after then Interior Secretary Watt banned rock music. At the Capitol tonight, the program is traditional, patriotic music followed by fireworks. Now this.
Federal Express handles everything from 2 ounces all the way up to 125 pounds.
President Reagan spent the 4th at a stock car race in Daytona Beach, Florida. The president used the words rude and unnecessary to describe the harassment of 2 American diplomats today in the Soviet Union. The 2 were detained for 2 hours by authorities. I'm Eric Engberg, CBS News, Washington. More news later on this CBS station and on CBS News Night Watch.